After a long, hard summer of building a house, using this tractor for a lot of that work, trenching and dirt work, it's time for some overdue maintenance. On a Kubota L3200, the engine oil filter is right here. Oil fill port is right here behind this piece of plastic, and the dipstick is right here. Two low point drains on this motor, one on either side of the front drive shaft. So we'll get down there and take a look at where those drains are. So it's a 19 millimeter that goes on this oil drain. So the drain plugs have these copper washers on them that are used for sealing. This one's got a big groove on it, and I dropped the other one into the oil pan. But I happen to have a copper washer sealer kit that you get on Amazon. Check the link in the description. So we're just going to replace two copper crush washers. So now we've got new copper crush washers. We can put the drain plugs back in. This is the engine oil filter. We've got a new one here. This is not a genuine Kubota part. This is a kit that I order off of Amazon of the equivalent filters that are much, much cheaper and much more readily available. So we're going to pull this off here, and we're going to replace it with this aftermarket one. So we're going to get this thing broke loose. Okay. Okay. So we're just going to stick that shroud up and out of the way because it's zip tied to a couple of hoses that it's fine. Pull our fill cap. Got the Kubota oil funnel. It doesn't seem to work very well. Never used that before. And we're going to just start adding oil. Came with some plugs for the end, little caps to keep it clean. Oh yeah, not even registering. So I'm about impatient as hell, but I'm making a mess, that's for sure. And as I was alluding to, I have used Kubota products in the past. However, I have since stopped buying really expensive Kubota oils, and I use the equivalents. And in this case, it is the SAE 15W40 from Rotella from Shell. So this is what I'm going to top off this tractor with. Alright, hopefully you guys can see that. So I don't measure how many quarts of oil go in this motor. I use the dipstick and the holes that are on the dipstick. There's a low and a high, and I go about 3/4 of the way between those two holes. And I call it good. I've been running it that way since I owned it, and it seems to work really well. I know a lot of guys online are all about this. Exactly how many quarts do I need? I buy a gallon at a time, and I don't know, I used 3/4 of that, and I used half of the other one, so it's at least 1.5 gallons roughly, but don't quote me on that. I use a dipstick. I just check the oil level. And on the hydraulic oil, I check it with the sight glass. I make sure I put it until I see where it's supposed to be on the sight glass. On the front axle, like you're going to see, I use the high-level overflow port, and so I don't, I mean, I guess if you're going to the store, you want to buy enough. In my case, I'd recommend 2 gallons for the engine oil, and I know it's roughly 5 containers full for the front axle, and well, I buy the hydraulic fluid 5 gallons at a time, and I don't go, it takes me 4 or 5 oil changes, hydraulic fluid swap outs to go through all that. So yeah, I'm not the guy to tell you exactly how many bottles of each type of fluid you're going to need. I just use the tractor and it tells me, and I go from there. Put the cap, which I hate this rubberized cap, put that back in the fill port. All right, that's back in place, oil's done, dipstick's in. It's time to swap out the fuel filter. I have a aftermarket fuel filter here from, what brand is this? This is Baldwin filters, so this is the diesel fuel filter for this Kubota. So you just twist this thing loose, it dumps fluid everywhere, you twist it loose, and then it stops. So after this thing came off, there's a larger O-ring that drops down over the top of the filter, so make sure you don't lose that. And then you'll need a pair of needle nose pliers or some sort of pliers to grab a hold of the housing and pull on one side and the other one back and forth until this thing comes up and out of the housing. We're going to reuse the large O-ring that was already in there. We've got the housing cleaned up. The housing drops into some grooves that are built into the filter housing. And you get it reset down in there. Drop the O-ring in. I like to push the little plunger and flush a little bit of diesel out of here. I don't know why, I just do. And you can, if you thread quickly, you don't make that giant of a mess, but if you thread slowly, you do. And that's all there is to it. So now we're going to swap out the air filter. So you've got two clips, one on the bottom, one on the top. Remove the housing. Remove the very dirty old air filter, and that's trash. New aftermarket filter. Make sure you seat it. Down where it goes. Make sure you put your cover back on in the direction where the drain port is down. That's all there is to that. So you can see I'm a little low. I mean, I'm not down to the low point, but I'm below where I'd like to be. So I want to be up at the full mark. And we have multi-purpose, extended life, add to any color antifreeze. So we're full. There we go. I'm gonna make sure I wipe that up. Don't want any of this getting on the ground and the dog coming after it. I want to talk about a point of contention with a lot of people, a lot of tractor owners. A lot of guys, when they do their hydraulic oil change, they change all of the hydraulic fluid in their tractor. And I realize that that's probably what the manufacturer recommends, or that's what a dealership would do. But you know what? I don't pay for dealership service. It's way too expensive. And I've run this tractor a whole lot, and this is how I do it. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying this is how I do it. I swap out my oil filters, my hydraulic oil filters. I have an outlet filter and an inlet filter on the other side. The amount of oil that I lose while I'm doing that, while I take off the old one and put the new one on both sides, plus I go to the low point drains on the back axles and I drain a little bit of oil out of there. I take the cap off, I let it drain for 3 or 4 or 5 seconds. I put the cap back in, makes a mess, but it is what it is. And then I just top off the tank, the oil, the hydraulic oil. I don't switch out the, 11 gallons I think it is, or something like that, of hydraulic oil that's in this tractor, hydraulic fluid. Just a little heads up, there's a magnet inside of these filters. So there's an O-ring and a magnet, and that magnet is to catch chips from the transmission. Now, when you first buy a tractor and you do your first service, if you don't take it to the dealership, or even your second or third or fourth service sometimes, you'll see big chips. Might be make you a little nervous. But the reality is that's your transmission wearing in, breaking in like it's supposed to, and it's really not a big deal. Now, if you see chips, big chunky chips, or fractured chips of metal, that's a different situation, probably a transmission problem. In my case, I have a hydrostatic transmission, and I've never seen those fractured sort of broken off pieces versus chips of metal, or shavings, I'll call it. Shavings of metal is more what you should be seeing. But we're gonna get this pulled off and see if we see any. If we do, I'll show them to you, or I'll try to. And if we don't, well, we don't. No lollygaggling with this. Wow, that's a lot more than I normally lose, so that's maybe a good thing. Okay, let me show you guys what I was talking about. So you see all this stuff here? That's all metal shavings from my transmission. And this is normal wear and tear. This metal chunks here. That's normal stuff. That's about the amount I see every time I change this out. And that's what the magnet is for, is to keep that out of your system. So that's perfectly normal, and that's what you should expect to see. Underneath the left side of this tractor, and it's a little bit more pain in the butt to get to because you got to step in the way and it's kind of farther under there. In this case, I am going to use a Kubota OEM filter, but that's just because this is the last one of these I have left over from back when I bought original Kubota parts when the tractor was brand new. I happened to dig this out from behind some other boxes I had. So we're going to use this up, but I don't actually buy these anymore. I buy the version that's on there, which is a lot cheaper. See the link to Amazon. And we're going to make sure that the old gasket is off. See that? The old gasket's stuck. So it's a really good thing I saw that, because that would have sealed properly. So make sure your seating surface is clean and the old gasket is removed. Lube your new gasket. Thread on your new filter. So I'm to the point where I'm going to top off my hydraulic fluid in my tractor. Now, Kubota, as far as I can tell, does not make a hydraulic dye, but John Deere, even though I'm not a big fan of John Deere, but that's a personal preference, makes hydraulic fluid dye. I just happen to have some that I picked up from my uncle. John Deere dye for hydraulic system. Realize I've had my tractor now for going on 5 years. I've never done this before, but it was an awesome thing that was in his tractor, and I'm going to add it to mine, and hopefully it works out well. So we're going to pour about half of this bottle into the hydraulic reservoir before we top off the hydraulic fluid. All right, so we finished topping it off. So there's a sight glass, and that shows you that the hydraulic fluid in the tractor is at the correct position that it's supposed to be, or correct level that it's supposed to be. So I've re-topped it off, and that's what we've got. My hope is when I turn the tractor on, it'll mix in that red dye, and that will become even more visible than it currently is. Because when that sight glass is dirty, or the hydraulic oil starts getting dirty, that's hard to see sometimes. So we're moving on to the front axle gear oil change. So we're going to fill that front axle up with SAE 80W90. This is gear oils. I've taken a oil bottle and I've cut it into shaped it into a funnel, because otherwise it makes a giant mess. And then we'll go ahead and remove the drain plug. So you see the oil draining out of the hole through the funnel and down into the oil pan. That's what we're draining right now. And it takes quite a while to let this all drain down. It goes real slow. So on the front left side of the tractor you have this little plug, and this plug is the fill port validation. So you take this out and you fill up the axle from the other side, and when oil comes out of here, you know that you have the right amount of oil in here. So we're going to pull this out to try to allow this to vent a little bit, because it's taking a really long time to drain. So there shouldn't be any oil coming out of here. If there is, we got problems. And there's not, which is good, because I've been draining for quite a while now, but hopefully by letting this vent, it'll let oil flow out of the other end faster. Drain plug back in. And we'll grab our 14mm wrench and we'll snug that drain plug back up. Now we can get our makeshift funnel we cut out of the oil bottle, which works really well. So we're putting in the 80W90 gear oil. we're done filling up the front axle, and it basically takes 5.5. These are 1 quart containers, so this thing is smashed out, so we need to replace this. I've got a new one. So we get this clip put on here, but this has this foam stuff. And I'm gonna try and remove that. All right, we went down and washed this thing up a little bit. We need to get this foam off of here. Okay, good foam. The thing with CA glue is it has a tendency to melt stuff like this. Okay, that went actually really well. Way better than I thought it was going to. So we've got the foam all the way around the light. So we're gonna get the new light put up in here. Good as new. Well, that's going to wrap up the service on this Kubota L3200. We did the front axle oil, we did the engine oil, and we switched out about, I don't know, 35–40% probably of the hydraulic fluid. Changed out all the filters, changed the diesel filter, changed the air filters. Basically, we got it full service and up and ready to roll, so we're going to go get the front loader put back on it and get stored for the rest of the winter. And it'll be ready to roll in the spring. If you guys wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, it always helps me out in the long run. Check out some of these other links. I'll have the tractor series of videos and the garage build up there. Till next time, thanks for watching.